In the midst of a bustling dinner service, Mr. Harrison's voice boomed across the room. "Marcus, enough. Reveal your true self now, or watch everything you've built crumble to dust." What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me. This is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The evening air carried a warm, golden glow as the city settled into its nightly rhythm. The street outside the restaurant buzzed with the soft hum of chatter, distant music, and the occasional clatter of footsteps against cobblestone. In the heart of this urban landscape stood a charming, time-worn building with large glass windows that spilled warm light onto the sidewalk. The inviting aromas of freshly baked bread and roasted coffee beans wove through the air, mingling with the soft strains of a piano playing in the background. Inside, the restaurant pulsed with life, a delicate balance of refined elegance and the raw energy of everyday struggle. Marcus moved through the dining room with a quiet grace, his steps measured and deliberate. His uniform, crisp and impeccably neat, hinted at a level of professionalism that exceeded the typical expectations of a waiter. His dark eyes, deep and observant, seemed to hold stories untold, glimmering with an inner resolve that few could guess. He greeted each guest with a respectful nod and a gentle smile, his voice soft yet confident as he recited the menu or offered a kind word. Even in moments of the busiest rush, when orders flew and the clinking of glasses merged with the steady murmur of conversation, Marcus maintained a calm dignity, an unspoken assurance that he was always in control. In a corner of the room, behind a polished wooden counter, Mr. Harrison, the restaurant manager, kept a vigilant watch. His presence was imposing, a man whose eyes missed nothing, whose tone brooked no argument. The lines on his face and the sharp set of his jaw revealed a history of hard decisions and unyielding discipline. Harrison's approach to management was strict, even harsh at times. He demanded perfection from every member of his staff, and often let his impatience show, especially when things did not go exactly as he expected. His voice, when raised, cut through the ambient noise like a knife, a stark contrast to the gentle murmur that filled the dining area. The restaurant was known in the neighborhood not only for its exquisite cuisine, but also for the palpable tension that simmered beneath the surface, a tension born of unspoken rivalries, suppressed secrets, and the clash of different worlds. As the night unfolded, the air grew charged with anticipation, as though every smile and every frown were part of an elaborate dance whose true steps remained hidden from view. Marcus's background was a quiet enigma. Born in a modest neighborhood far from the glittering skyscrapers and bustling avenues of the city center, he had worked hard to rise above his circumstances. His early life was marked by perseverance in the face of adversity, a journey of self-discovery that had eventually led him to this very establishment. Though many saw him merely as a waiter, there was an aura about him, a subtle, almost imperceptible glow of confidence that set him apart. Marcus carried with him a secret, one that whispered of connections and opportunities far grander than a life of serving tables. Yet he never boasted. Instead, his humility was his shield, carefully crafted over years of silent determination. On the other side of this delicate balance stood Mr. Harrison, a man who had clawed his way up from humble beginnings as well. But while Marcus's journey was marked by quiet ambition and hidden talent, Harrison's was paved with an uncompromising adherence to authority. His stern methods, his relentless pursuit of order, and his unwillingness to entertain any deviation from the set path had earned him both respect and resentment among his staff. There was an irony in the dynamic between them, a contrast of worlds that would soon hint at secrets waiting to be revealed. In the bustling kitchen behind the dining area, Chef Carlos orchestrated a symphony of sizzling pans, chopping knives, and the rhythmic clatter of utensils. With salt and pepper hair and eyes that sparkled with the joy of culinary creation, Carlos was a pillar of calm amidst the chaos. He had known Marcus since the young man first set foot in the restaurant, and in his quiet way, he admired the subtle strength that Marcus exuded. Carlos often remarked to a fellow cook in hushed tones, "There's more to Marcus than meets the eye. I see a fire in him, a spark that might one day light up even the darkest corners of this world." His words, though soft, carried a weight of knowing that hinted at the layers yet to be uncovered. Elsewhere in the dining room, Jasmine, the hostess, moved gracefully among the tables, her laughter light and her smile genuine. With eyes that missed every detail and an intuition that bordered on the uncanny, Jasmine was the bridge between the kitchen, the dining area, and the hidden undercurrents of the restaurant's daily life. She often exchanged knowing glances with Marcus, as if they shared a secret language unspoken to the others. Her friendly banter with regular patrons and quick wit during stressful moments made her a favorite among the guests, and her loyalty to Marcus was evident in every interaction. As the evening advanced, the subtle interplay of personalities began to set the stage for something unexpected. In one brief, seemingly ordinary exchange, Mr. Harrison's voice boomed across the room as he approached Marcus near the entrance. "Marcus," he barked, his tone leaving no room for misinterpretation, "I need you to handle table 6 with extra care tonight, and make sure the orders are followed to the letter." His words, laced with impatience, carried an undercurrent of disdain, a reminder that in this establishment every move was scrutinized, every mistake met with severe reproof. Marcus nodded politely, his face calm as he replied in a soft, measured tone, "Yes, Mr. Harrison." There was a quiet defiance in his eyes, though his voice betrayed nothing of the inner turmoil that occasionally flared when faced with such harsh commands. The brief moment of confrontation was lost in the general clamor of the restaurant, but for those who watched closely, like Jasmine or even Chef Carlos, it was a small yet telling reminder of the fragile balance between authority and hidden strength. Between the rhythmic clatter of dishes and the soft hum of conversation, a tension lay in wait, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. The scent of basil and garlic mingled with the sharp tang of lemon, and every sound, the gentle clink of cutlery, the murmured conversations of nearby diners, the soft footsteps of a waiter hurrying by, added layers to the rich tapestry of the evening. The restaurant, with its ornate light fixtures and plush red drapes, was a microcosm of the city itself, a place where beauty and brutality coexisted in a delicate, often volatile balance. In the midst of it all, Marcus moved with a calm that belied the storms that sometimes raged within him. His past, though shrouded in mystery, was marked by resilience. There were nights when he had walked long, lonely streets under a cold, indifferent sky, determined to carve out a future for himself. Those nights had taught him the value of silence and the strength of perseverance. And though he now worked amid the luxuries of a well-loved restaurant, a part of him remained alert, ever aware that the world was full of surprises, both bitter and sweet. There were moments when the silence between the clinks and murmurs seemed to stretch into eternity, punctuated only by the occasional, almost whispered, hints of secrets waiting to be unveiled. Marcus often caught himself lost in thought during these moments, his mind drifting to the fragments of his past, a childhood filled with both hardship and hope, dreams that had once seemed as distant as the stars, and the promise of a future that he believed was still within his grasp. It was during these fleeting instants that one could almost see the outline of a destiny that defied the limitations of the present. Yet, for all his inner reflections, Marcus maintained a gentle, outward demeanor. His interactions with the diners were laced with genuine warmth, his words simple yet laden with an unspoken understanding of the human condition. When he served an elderly couple celebrating a quiet anniversary, his smile was one of sincere felicity. When he delivered a special dish with extra care to a nervous young woman on her first date, his soft encouragement was enough to ease her worries. In each case, there was an artistry to the way he moved, each gesture imbued with purpose, each word measured for its comforting effect. But not everyone in the restaurant shared this gentle compassion. Mr. Harrison's eyes, always scanning, often betrayed a deep-seated impatience and a distrust of deviation from the norm. His world was one of strict rules and unwavering order, where every nuance of behavior was meticulously catalogued. The stark contrast between his approach and Marcus's understated brilliance was a silent, ongoing conflict, a conflict that hinted at more than just professional differences, but at a deeper, more intricate interplay of power and potential. In the back of Harrison's mind, there lingered an unspoken question about Marcus, a question that would, in time, unravel layers of hidden truth. One quiet moment in the evening, when the rush had slightly abated and soft jazz played in a secluded corner of the room, Marcus found himself near an open window. The night outside was alive with the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. He paused, allowing the cool air to brush against his face, and for a brief moment, the weight of his secret seemed lighter. In that pause, the delicate balance of his life, the mask he wore, and the reality that lay hidden beneath felt almost tangible. It was a reminder that every moment held the potential for revelation, every interaction a chance to tip the scales of destiny. The interplay of light and shadow in the restaurant served as a metaphor for the night unfolding. Shadows danced across the polished floors, and the soft glow of candlelight mingled with the harsher brightness of overhead lamps, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and enigmatic. Each reflection in the glassware, each flicker of the flame, hinted at stories waiting in the wings, stories of ambition, of hidden pasts, and of the ever-present possibility of betrayal. As the evening deepened, subtle hints of future discord began to emerge. A strained glance exchanged between Marcus and Jasmine as a difficult customer was handled with an unexpected grace, or the way Harrison's eyes narrowed ever so slightly when he saw Marcus interacting warmly with a well-dressed guest. There was an undercurrent of tension in these moments, a quiet promise that the calm was but a facade. For those who observed with careful eyes, it was clear that the night was not simply about service and satisfaction, it was about the unveiling of truths, about destinies intertwined in unexpected ways. By the time the clock neared the hour of closing, the restaurant had transformed from a lively haven of sensory delights into a stage set for the drama that lay ahead. Each character had played their part in this unfolding narrative, leaving behind small clues that hinted at the grander design. Marcus's serene demeanor, Harrison's steely control, Carlos's quiet wisdom, and Jasmine's intuitive warmth, all interwoven to create a tapestry of lives on the brink of transformation. The night ended with a lingering sense of expectancy. As the last few guests left and the cleaning crew began their methodical work, the silence that followed was filled with an almost palpable promise. In the dim light of the empty dining room, every table, every chair, every lingering scent of the evening spoke of secrets yet to be unveiled and betrayals that would soon shake the foundations of their carefully constructed world. In that final quiet moment before the next day would begin, Marcus lingered by the window, lost in thought. His eyes traced the cityscape beyond the glass, a tapestry of lights and darkened alleys that held as many stories as the restaurant itself. Though his exterior was calm, his mind churned with memories, dreams, and the weight of a secret that could change everything. He wondered silently, with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty, if the life he had built within these walls was merely a prelude to something far greater, something that would challenge every assumption held by those around him, especially by Mr. Harrison, who remained oblivious to the true depths of the man he so often chastised. As the building settled into its post-evening stillness, the seeds of distrust and ambiguity had already been sown. Every gesture, every exchanged look, every quiet word carried the promise of forthcoming revelations. The stage was set, and in the soft, enveloping darkness of the night, the delicate balance between duty and destiny, between obedience and rebellion, hung in the air like a breath held in suspense. In that hushed moment, it was clear that nothing was as it seemed. The restaurant, with all its familiar sights and sounds, was on the cusp of a transformation, a change that would blur the lines between servant and master, between the unassuming and the powerful. And as the night gave way to the inevitable dawn, the hidden ties that bound Marcus to a destiny far beyond the confines of this modest establishment lay quietly waiting to be revealed. promising to shatter the illusions of power and expose the intricate dance of trust and betrayal that governed every human heart. The restaurant's doors, though closed for the night, seemed to guard not just the physical space, but also the secrets that resided within its walls. Each polished surface, every lingering aroma, and the quiet murmur of memories whispered a promise that when the next day arrived, the quiet, unremarkable facade would begin to crumble, making way for revelations that no one could have foreseen. In that transformative silence, the story of Marcus, Mr. Harrison, and the intertwined fates of everyone in the restaurant was just beginning, a story of ambition, of concealed power, and of a hidden executive identity that would soon upend the carefully maintained order. And so, as the city outside prepared to awaken once more to a new day, the foundation had been laid for an unfolding drama, one that would challenge perceptions, test loyalties, and ultimately redefine the very essence of identity and power. The echoes of this night would resonate far beyond the walls of the restaurant, inviting every observer to question what lies beneath the surface of those who serve, and what price is paid when hidden truths are finally allowed to emerge. The next morning, the restaurant awoke to a restless energy that had nothing to do with the clatter of utensils or the soft murmur of early patrons. Sunlight streamed through the large glass windows, scattering patterns on the marble floor. Yet beneath that serene glow, a tension simmered, a tension that would soon engulf every corner of the establishment. Marcus arrived before dawn, his mind already half in the boardrooms of a world far removed from the clink of glasses and the hiss of steaming pans. Though he had worn his crisp uniform the night before, today his eyes carried an added weight, a secret that had begun to crack the calm facade he so carefully maintained. As he prepared the dining area, straightening chairs and polishing silverware, he couldn't shake the memory of the previous night's quiet revelations. He thought of the subtle looks exchanged, of the almost unspoken understanding between him and Jasmine, and of Mr. Harrison's hard, unyielding gaze. There was something in the way Harrison watched him, a mix of suspicion and contempt that hinted at a deeper insecurity. The morning rush began slowly, with soft conversations and light laughter, as if the day had yet to acknowledge the storm that was gathering. Chef Carlos was already in the kitchen, moving with the measured grace of someone who had learned to dance with chaos. His hands, steady despite the frenzy of chopping and sizzling pans, betrayed a rare calm. Yet even he sensed that today was not going to be like any other. His eyes, wise and probing, often wandered toward Marcus, as if searching for clues to a mystery that lay hidden beneath the surface of the young man's gentle smile. As the day advanced, the restaurant filled with a mixture of regular customers and a few unfamiliar, well-dressed faces whose mere presence sent a ripple of anticipation through the staff. Among them was Mr. Everett, a dignified man whose crisp suit and measured gait marked him as someone of considerable importance. When Marcus approached to serve him, there was an almost imperceptible shift in the air. Mr. Everett's eyes lingered on Marcus a moment longer than was customary, as if he recognized a spark that belied the humble uniform. "Good afternoon," Marcus said softly, offering his practiced smile. The dignitary nodded in acknowledgement, his tone measured and warm. "It's a pleasure to see such dedication in every detail." This simple exchange sent a shiver through Marcus, not out of fear, but out of a rekindling of memories from a past he had long tried to bury. The acknowledgement of his hidden talents and connections, though veiled in courteous politeness, stirred something deep within him, a reminder of boardroom battles and whispered negotiations where he once held sway. Yet, as quickly as it came, the moment passed, and Marcus moved on to attend to other guests. However, the look in Mr. Everett's eyes clung to him like a shadow, mingling with the growing undercurrent of conflict. Mid-afternoon brought the bustle of peak service. Orders flew like arrows, voices merged into a single cacophonous rhythm, and every person in the restaurant became a player in a symphony of service and expectation. Amid this controlled chaos, Jasmine glided through the room with her characteristic warmth, her laughter brightening even the most tense moments. As she passed by Marcus, she leaned in close and murmured, "I sense that something's not right today." You seem distracted." Her eyes, filled with concern and unspoken support, met his, and for a fleeting second, Marcus almost confessed his inner turmoil. But he only smiled and whispered back, "Just the weight of a long journey, Jasmine. Sometimes the past comes knocking when you least expect it." It was in that moment of quiet camaraderie that a sudden, insistent vibration cut through the ambient noise. Marcus's phone, tucked away in his pocket, began to ring with a number he did not recognize. Glancing around furtively, he excused himself and stepped into a quiet corridor behind the dining area. There, away from prying eyes and the relentless pace of the restaurant, he answered the call. The voice on the other end was low and measured, a voice that carried both authority and a hint of urgency. "Marcus, it's been a long time," the caller said. "The ties you have are needed now more than ever. They say change is coming. Are you ready to step back into the light?" At that moment, every word seemed to echo in the silence of the corridor. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, and a mix of excitement and dread flooded him. His hidden executive ties, a secret he guarded as jealously as any treasure, were being called into action. But before he could reply, the line went dead. The abrupt silence left him standing there, the phone still pressed to his ear, and 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. The question lingered in the cool air. What would you do if a part of your past, long buried and secret, suddenly reared its head with the promise of power and peril? Back in the dining area, the sudden absence of Marcus did not go unnoticed. Mr. Harrison's keen eyes, ever vigilant, caught the subtle shift in the waiter's demeanor and the slight delay in his return. Moments later, as Marcus rejoined the fray, Harrison's voice sliced through the clamor. "Marcus, what took you so long?" "We are not running a charity here," he barked, his tone laced with a mix of anger and something else, a barely concealed curiosity. Marcus, caught off guard by the harsh rebuke, simply nodded and resumed his work, though a shadow of unease now darkened his eyes. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, the tension in the restaurant thickened like a storm cloud. Each passing minute seemed to pile on the hidden resentments and secret ambitions simmering beneath the surface. In the kitchen, Chef Carlos exchanged worried glances with a fellow cook as he stirred a simmering sauce. "I've seen that look in his eyes before," he confided softly, "as if he's carrying the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders." The fellow cook, wiping his brow with a faded towel, simply replied, "It's a dangerous game, serving in a place where secrets are currency." Their whispered words drifted through the air, blending with the clatter of pans and the occasional hiss of steam. As dinner service approached, the restaurant's atmosphere transformed into a stage for a more intense performance. The clinking of cutlery became the metronome for an unfolding drama, where every glance and every word carried hidden meanings. Mr. Harrison, whose impatience had already reached a fever pitch, began to tighten his control over the staff. His sharp commands cut through the room, and even the soft murmurs of conversation stilled in deference to his authority. "I expect perfection, Marcus," he said, his voice low and threatening as he passed near the service station. "Do not let your distractions affect your work again." The words, though spoken with practiced severity, betrayed a hint of something more personal, a deep-seated suspicion that seemed to gnaw at his conscience. In the midst of this charged environment, Marcus found himself increasingly torn between the world he had built within the restaurant and the call of a past filled with power and possibility. Every interaction felt like a test, every command from Mr. Harrison a reminder of the invisible chains that held him back. As he carried a tray laden with delicately plated dishes to a table near the center of the room, his mind replayed the mysterious phone call. Who was behind it? What did they want from him? And most importantly, was he truly ready to risk everything for a chance at reclaiming the life he had once known? The turning point came unexpectedly when a well-dressed woman, accompanied by a small entourage, was seated in a private booth. Her presence exuded an air of authority and refinement, and her eyes swept the room with a knowing glint. When Marcus approached to take their order, the woman's gaze locked onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. "I've heard much about you," she said in a soft yet commanding tone, "about your journey and the talents you hide behind a humble smile." Her words, gentle yet piercing, struck a chord deep within Marcus. He hesitated, his usual practiced smile faltering as his mind raced. The woman's remark was not an idle compliment. It was a subtle acknowledgement of the secret life he had tried so hard to keep under wraps. Across the room, Mr. Harrison's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as he observed the exchange. Was it possible that this woman knew more than she let on? His thoughts churned with envy and suspicion. Later, as he passed by the private booth, he muttered to himself, "I don't trust that look in her eyes. And I certainly don't trust you, Marcus." The quiet accusation, though barely audible, sent a ripple of tension through the air. The customers in the vicinity exchanged uneasy glances, and the room seemed to hold its breath for the briefest moment. Later that evening, as the service entered its final frantic phase, the restaurant became a cauldron of emotions. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations formed a chaotic symphony against the backdrop of suppressed anger and unspoken secrets. Marcus found himself caught between the demands of his role and the pull of his hidden destiny. Every time he moved, every gesture seemed fraught with double meaning. His eyes, which had always held a quiet resolve, now flashed with the conflicted light of a man on the brink of transformation. The tipping point arrived when a minor mishap, a dropped glass, a spilled sauce, provided Mr. Harrison with the pretext to unleash his pent-up fury. In a sudden burst of anger, Harrison stormed into the dining area, his voice rising above the din. "This is unacceptable," he roared, his words echoing off the walls. "I will not tolerate mistakes from someone who is supposed to know his place." His gaze fell upon Marcus, and in that moment, the air thickened with a mix of accusation and disbelief. Marcus, though outwardly calm, felt his heart pounding like a drum, each beat a reminder of the life he had long concealed. In the ensuing chaos, voices clashed and accusations flew. Jasmine, ever the mediator, stepped in with gentle firmness. "Please, let's not allow anger to cloud our judgment," she pleaded, her voice soft yet insistent, trying to bridge the growing chasm between authority and hidden truth. But the tension was too high. Every word, every gesture carried the weight of unspoken betrayals. Marcus, for his part, tried to maintain his composure, but the storm within him was now impossible to ignore. As Mr. Harrison's harsh words reverberated around the room, Marcus felt a burning determination rise inside him, a resolve that whispered of retribution, of reclaiming not just his dignity, but his true identity. The confrontation reached a fevered pitch when, in a moment of raw emotion, Mr. Harrison seized Marcus by the collar. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" He spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and insecurity. "You hide behind your secrets, your fancy calls, and your half-truths. But I see you for what you are, a nobody trying to play a role that isn't yours." The accusation, bitter and laden with malice, hung in the air as Marcus's eyes flashed with a hidden fire. "I serve what is expected of me," Marcus replied quietly, his tone measured, yet carrying an undercurrent of defiance that sent shivers down the spines of those nearby. "And I do it with the same dedication as anyone else." His words, though soft, carried the weight of 1,000 silent battles fought in boardrooms and back alleys alike. In that charged moment, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath, every patron and staff member caught in the gravity of the conflict. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between Marcus and Mr. Harrison, a space where secrets, ambitions, and suppressed dreams collided. And then, as if in response to an unspoken plea, a collective thought seemed to ripple through the room. What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted harbored such a dangerous secret? After the altercation, the restaurant gradually returned to its routine, though the earlier incident left a palpable mark on the atmosphere. Whispers followed Marcus as he moved about, each hushed conversation laced with speculation and awe. In the kitchen, Chef Carlos prepared his dishes with a renewed sense of urgency, as if trying to mend the invisible fissures that had begun to split the fabric of their small world. He shared a quiet glance with Jasmine, whose eyes now shone with a mix of concern and fierce loyalty. "He's not just a waiter," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's so much more than that, and soon everyone will see it." The evening wore on, And as the last rays of daylight slipped away, a series of unexpected events continued to unravel the delicate balance that had been maintained for so long. Just as the restaurant began to empty and the night shift prepared to take over, Marcus's phone vibrated once more. This time, the message was a short, cryptic note. The truth is a double-edged sword. Choose your path wisely. The words sent a chill down his spine, a reminder that the world he had left behind was still very much a part of him, and that danger lurked even in the quietest moments. That message, brief yet loaded with implication, ignited a series of private reflections in Marcus's mind. He recalled the voice on the phone earlier, the way it had stirred memories of boardroom battles and high-stakes decisions. He knew that his hidden ties were not just remnants of a former life. They were active, pulsing connections to a realm of power and intrigue that could either elevate him or shatter the fragile order of the restaurant. As he looked out through a rain-speckled window at the darkened city beyond, his thoughts swirled with questions of loyalty, ambition, and betrayal. In that silent moment, he silently asked himself if he was ready to embrace the chaos that his secret might unleash. Outside, the night deepened, and the city pulsed with a mysterious rhythm that echoed the turmoil within the restaurant. Mr. Harrison retreated into his office, where the solitude offered little respite from his growing paranoia. His mind replayed every slight, every hidden smile that Marcus had worn throughout the day, and he began to suspect that there were layers to the young man that he could neither understand nor control. In the dim light of his office, Harrison's reflection in the window seemed to merge with the dark outlines of the city, a man haunted by his own insecurities and the relentless march of secrets. In the midst of these swirling emotions, the restaurant became a crucible of conflicting loyalties and emerging truths. As the night shift began its careful dance of resetting tables and mopping up spilled drinks, whispers of earlier events lingered in the corners of the room. Staff members exchanged furtive looks and subdued conversations, each one adding to the tapestry of suspicion that now defined their shared existence. Jasmine, ever watchful, kept her eyes on Marcus, silently vowing to protect him from forces she could only begin to comprehend. Her inner thoughts raced with questions. How long could Marcus hide behind his gentle smile before the world demanded the truth? And what price would he pay for maintaining a secret that was destined to surface? Amid the hushed conversations and soft strains of an old jazz record playing in the background, the restaurant itself seemed to breathe with anticipation. Every creak of a chair, every whispered remark between colleagues, was a subtle prelude to the storm that was gathering on the horizon. Marcus, now alone in a quiet corner after the night's rush, allowed himself a rare moment of introspection. His eyes closed, and he could almost hear the faint echo of boardroom debates and the rustle of high-powered contracts, reminders of a world where he once reigned. In that reflective silence, the weight of his hidden identity pressed down on him, a constant reminder of the fragile line he walked between the life he led and the destiny that beckoned. Then, as if to punctuate the mounting tension, a sudden burst of commotion erupted from the entrance. A group of unfamiliar figures, cloaked in the mystery of the night, swept into the restaurant with an urgency that defied explanation. Their presence was an anomaly, a stark disruption to the well-practiced rhythm of service. Marcus's eyes met those of one of the strangers, a tall man with an inscrutable expression and a subtle nod that carried unspoken messages. In that fleeting moment, Marcus recognized a reflection of his own hidden past. Was this a warning? A summons? Or the prelude to a betrayal that would shake the very foundations of everything he had built? The strangers took seats at a secluded table near the back, their conversation muted but intense. Even as they spoke in low tones, the very air seemed to tremble with the secrets they carried. Mr. Harrison, noticing the disturbance, moved swiftly to observe, his gaze fixed on Marcus as if searching for a connection. "I don't like surprises," he muttered under his breath, his voice heavy with foreboding. The tension between authority and hidden truth had now taken on a more dangerous dimension. Every soul in the restaurant felt it. A silent, shared understanding that the night was far from over, that the path ahead was riddled with uncertainty and peril. In the quiet aftermath of the stranger's arrival, as the restaurant slowly settled into a strained calm, Marcus found himself standing at a crossroads. His heart pounded with both fear and anticipation, and the earlier messages and fleeting encounters coalesced into a singular burning question. Could he continue to hide the extraordinary truth of his identity while navigating the treacherous waters of loyalty, ambition, and betrayal? The thought was as tantalizing as it was terrifying, and it filled him with an urgency to act, a desire to reclaim control of his destiny before forces beyond his control tore apart the delicate order of his present life. For a long, agonizing moment, time seemed to suspend itself as Marcus weighed his options. The quiet murmur of the restaurant, the soft strains of jazz, and the low hum of conversation all faded into the background, leaving only the sound of his racing pulse and the distant murmur of the city beyond. If you were in his shoes, one might ask, how would you choose between the safety of a well-worn path and the uncertain promise of a greater destiny? The question hung in the air like a challenge, daring him to step forward into the unknown. Finally, with a deep, steadying breath, Marcus resolved that he could no longer let his hidden identity be a silent secret. There was a storm brewing, a storm that promised to expose long-concealed truths and force choices that would reshape lives. With a determination born of both quiet resilience and the fierce spark of ambition, he tucked his phone away and returned to the front, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for allies among the strangers. Jasmine's supportive glance and Chef Carlos's subtle nod confirmed to him that he was not alone in this struggle, that behind every gesture of routine service lay an unspoken network of loyalty and hope. As the night deepened, every moment became charged with the electric potential of revelation. Every whisper between staff members, every exchanged glance, carried the weight of impending change. And while Mr. Harrison continued to pace the corridors with a growing air of suspicion, the seeds of betrayal and unexpected alliances were already taking root in the hearts of those who knew that nothing was as it seemed. In the final throes of the night, as the last customers departed and the once bustling dining room surrendered to a hushed stillness, Marcus found himself standing once again by the window. The city outside, with its flickering neon signs and the soft patter of rain on the pavement, seemed to mirror the internal maelstrom he felt. His hidden executive ties, once a quiet undercurrent in his life, now pulsed loudly in his veins. A call to action that promised both redemption and ruin. The final text message echoed in his mind. The truth is a double-edged sword. Choose your path wisely. In that suspended moment, with the weight of past regrets and future possibilities converging in a single, potent breath, Marcus understood that the journey ahead would demand every ounce of his courage and resolve. The restaurant, with all its beauty and brutality, had become a stage where the roles of servant and master, of hidden power and unyielding authority, would be redefined in ways no one could have foreseen. And as the silence of the closing hour wrapped around him like a shroud, Marcus's eyes shone with a newfound determination. The unfolding drama was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The path ahead was treacherous, laden with twists that would test loyalties and betray hidden promises. With a final, resolute glance at the darkened street beyond, Marcus stepped away from the window, ready to face the storm that awaited him. A storm that would force every soul in the restaurant to confront the deep, unsettling truth that sometimes the most unassuming faces hide the greatest power. In that charged stillness, every whispered question and every silent promise merged into one resounding call to action. What would you do in the moment when every certainty crumbles, and the only truth left is the one you carry inside? The night held its breath, and with it, the promise of revelations that would soon shatter the carefully constructed illusions of power, loyalty, and identity. And so, as the final echoes of the night faded into the promise of a new dawn, the restaurant braced itself for the inevitable reckoning. A reckoning that would challenge everything it meant to serve, to lead, and to hide one's true self in a world where betrayal lurked in every shadow and the line between duty and destiny had become forever blurred. The night deepened into an almost unbearable stillness as the first hints of dawn began to soften the edges of the darkness. The restaurant, now emptied of its evening clientele and silent except for the quiet hum of the cooling air, held its breath. Every surface, every polished table, every flickering candle seemed to echo the secrets that had been carefully hidden behind smiles and measured words. In that charged silence, Marcus felt the weight of his two worlds pressing down on him. For years, he had played the role of the humble waiter, moving gracefully between tables and concealing the vast reservoir of ambition and power that lay just beneath his calm exterior. But tonight, the truth he had fought so hard to keep secret was poised to shatter the fragile peace of this familiar place. The final act began in the restaurant's private dining room, where the soft glow of overhead lights met the sharp clarity of early morning. Mr. Harrison, his face drawn and tense from the day's earlier confrontations, stood near the large window, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His mind churned with anger and suspicion. Memories of harsh words and whispered doubts replayed in his mind like an endless loop. He had always prided himself on maintaining order and discipline, but now that order was threatened by forces he could neither see nor understand. Every slight glance from Marcus, every supportive nod exchanged between Jasmine and the chef only deepened his unease. It was at that moment that the heavy wooden door to the private room swung open with a measured creak. In stepped Mr. Everett, the dignified man whose earlier presence had stirred something within Marcus, and the mysterious, well-dressed woman whose commanding aura had hinted at secrets beyond the obvious. Their arrival was not heralded by fanfare or loud proclamations, but by an undeniable shift in the energy of the room. The air seemed to crackle as if charged with the promise of revelations long overdue. "Mr. Harrison," Mr. Everett began, his voice calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of authority that could silence even the most defiant dissent. "We need to speak now." His eyes flickered momentarily to Marcus, whose expression was a mixture of defiance and quiet resolve. For a long, heavy moment, the room was filled with a silence that felt as tangible as any spoken word. Harrison's voice, tight, with barely contained fury, broke the quiet. "What is it you want, Everett?" "I have no time for this nonsense," he barked, taking a step forward. His tone was harsh, but beneath it lay a tremor, a hint that he knew something was amiss, something he was unwilling or unable to confront. The well-dressed woman stepped forward, her gaze steady and unyielding. "This isn't about nonsense, Harrison," she said softly but firmly. "It's about justice and truth." Her eyes, dark and penetrating, scanned the room before settling on Marcus. "Marcus, it is time that the world knows who you truly are." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the few remaining staff gathered in the room. Marcus's heart pounded as he looked from one face to another. For years he had carried his secret as a quiet burden, a hidden executive identity that connected him to a vast corporate empire far beyond the modest confines of this restaurant. That life had been forced upon him by circumstance, and he had learned to blend into the background, serving with humility while secretly directing far greater affairs. But tonight, everything was about to change. Mr. Everett continued. "You see, Marcus is not merely the waiter you all assume him to be. He has been working behind the scenes, a silent force of change. His talents, his leadership, and his vision have always been far beyond what is expected in this role." His words cut through the tension like a knife. "And Harrison," he said, turning his attention back to the manager, "you have exploited this establishment as if it were a stage for your own insecurities. Your harsh treatment and constant distrust have blinded you to the true potential that lies within these walls." Harrison's face reddened, his eyes flashing with indignation. "You dare speak to me this way?" he roared. "I have run this place with iron discipline, ensuring that every rule is followed to the letter. Marcus is a servant, nothing more. He is here to work, not to play at being something he is not." Marcus's eyes, steady and calm despite the storm raging within him, met Harrison's glare. I have always done my duty, he said quietly, his voice resonating with a strength that belied his gentle demeanor. But the world is changing, and sometimes duty means more than just following orders. It means having the courage to stand up for the truth, even when that truth disrupts the status quo. A charged silence fell over the room, thick with the gravity of every word spoken. Jasmine, who had been watching from a corner with worry in her eyes, stepped forward. "Please," she said softly, "let us not forget that we all serve a higher purpose here. Marcus's journey is not just about power or ambition, it's about redemption, about the belief that everyone deserves the chance to be seen for who they truly are." Her words, tender yet insistent, seemed to weave a bridge between the clashing forces in the room. As the confrontation unfolded, the soft hum of the restaurant's cooling systems was the only sound that dared break the stillness. Chef Carlos, who had long observed the unfolding drama with a mixture of apprehension and hope, added in his own measured tone, "Sometimes the greatest betrayal is not that we hide our true selves, but that we allow others to keep us from shining. Marcus has carried a secret not to deceive, but to protect a truth that can change everything." Mr. Harrison's eyes darted between these voices, his inner conflict laid bare. He had spent years cultivating an image of unwavering authority, yet here was a man, so unassuming on the surface, who now stood as a beacon of integrity and strength. The realization began to seep in slowly, a bitter truth that his own actions had been driven by fear and insecurity rather than genuine concern for the establishment. "You think my methods are driven by fear?" he spat, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and regret. "I have only ever acted in what I believed was the best interest of this restaurant." The well-dressed woman's gaze softened slightly as she addressed him. "Harrison, what you believed was in the best interest has become a prison. Not only for you, but for everyone here. The world outside is evolving, and clinging to old notions of authority only leads to betrayal. We must learn to trust, to forgive, and to see the potential in each other." At that, the door to the restaurant's back office burst open once again. A group of men and women in sharp business attire entered, their presence commanding and unmistakably official. One of them, a tall figure with a voice that carried both authority and empathy, stepped forward and addressed the assembled crowd. "I am Director Lawson," he announced. "I have come to confirm what many of you have suspected. Marcus is not only an exceptional employee, he is a leader, an executive whose vision has been recognized at the highest levels of our organization. The tests you have witnessed, the challenges you have faced tonight, were not meant to undermine you, but to reveal the strength that comes from unity and truth." The revelation hit like a tidal wave. For a long moment, the room was filled with stunned silence. Marcus felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension as the truth he had guarded for so long was laid bare for all to see. His hidden ties, the secret life he had maintained to protect himself from a world that might not understand, were now the very thing that would set him free. His eyes met those of Mr. Harrison, who now stood not as an accuser, but as a man on the precipice of an irreversible change, a change that would force him to confront his own missteps and learn the true meaning of leadership. Director Lawson continued, "Mr. Harrison, your record here has been marred by distrust and rigidity. It is time for you to step aside and allow new leadership to guide this establishment into a future where every person's potential is recognized." His words, firm and resolute, resonated deeply with the assembled staff. Even Harrison's defiant posture began to crumble as he realized that the power he had wielded so ruthlessly was slipping away. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady and filled with quiet determination. "I have always respected the work that this restaurant represents," he said, "and I have always believed that every person here deserves a chance to shine. Tonight, I am not merely revealing who I am inviting you all to be a part of something greater. Let us build a future where trust, respect, and loyalty are not just words on a sign, but the very foundation of our lives together." His words, simple yet profound, cut through the tension like a beam of light. The staff, who had once lived in the shadow of fear and unspoken rivalry, began to exchange tentative smiles and nods of understanding. Jasmine's eyes shone with unshed tears as she whispered, "This is the beginning of something beautiful, Marcus. I have always believed in you." Chef Carlos placed a steady hand on Marcus's shoulder, his quiet support speaking volumes about the bonds that had formed in the crucible of hardship. Mr. Harrison, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, finally spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps I have been too rigid, too blind to the changes that were happening around me." His admission, fragile as it was, hung in the air. For the first time, the stern manager appeared vulnerable, the lines of authority softening under the weight of genuine remorse. "I have lost sight of the people who make this place more than just a business. I have allowed my own insecurities to drive a wedge between us." His words, though spoken with reluctance, carried the promise of a long road to redemption. The room, once fraught with anger and suspicion, now filled with a cautious hope. Director Lawson's eyes met Harrison's, conveying silently that every end is but a new beginning. "Harrison," he said gently, "the journey to redemption begins with acceptance. Accept that we are all capable of change. Embrace the truth, even when it forces you to confront the parts of yourself you'd rather hide." As the first rays of dawn crept through the windows, bathing the room in a soft, forgiving light, Marcus felt the burden of his hidden life begin to lift. The revelation of his true identity, the acknowledgement of his executive ties, had not been a moment of triumph alone. It was a call to action for every soul in that room. His journey was one of courage, of risking vulnerability in a world that often punished the truth. And now, standing before his colleagues, he extended an invitation not only to join him in rebuilding the restaurant, but also in reimagining what it meant to serve with honor and passion. In a quiet, reflective moment that seemed to pause time itself, Marcus looked directly out toward the audience of those gathered, a diverse group of staff and patrons whose eyes shone with a mix of wonder and contemplation. "I ask you," he said, his voice gentle yet insistent, "what would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted held secrets that could change everything? Would you fear the truth, or would you embrace it and let it guide you to a better tomorrow?" His question was not merely rhetorical. It was an invitation for every listener to examine their own hearts, to consider the cost of betrayal and the beauty of redemption. The room slowly filled with murmurs of agreement and the soft clapping of hands, a tentative, healing applause that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Mr. Harrison, now standing a few paces behind Marcus, looked on with a mixture of regret and newfound hope. "I have learned," he said quietly, "that true leadership is not about control, but about trust. It is not about hiding behind authority, but about standing together in the face of change." His words, laden with the sincerity of a man ready to make amends, resonated deeply with everyone present. Outside, the city was already stirring awake. The neon signs had dimmed, replaced by the soft light of morning. The rain that had begun to fall earlier had washed away the grime of the night, leaving the streets glistening as if reflecting the promise of renewal. Inside, the restaurant itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Every table, every chair, every lingering aroma was now infused with the possibility of a new beginning, a chance to rebuild trust and embrace the hidden strengths within. The confrontation, once explosive and laden with accusations, had transformed into a moment of deep reflection. Marcus, still the gentle yet powerful force he had always been, gathered his courage and approached Mr. Harrison once more. "I know that change is never easy," he said softly, "and that the truth can hurt even when it is meant to heal. But we must remember that every betrayal, every harsh word, carries within it the seed of transformation. Let this be our turning point, a moment when we choose to see each other not as adversaries, but as partners in a shared journey." The words lingered in the air like a promise, and slowly, one by one, the remaining staff stepped forward. Jasmine, her voice trembling with emotion, said, "I have always believed that everyone deserves a chance to be seen. Today I see you, Marcus, and I see a future where we all shine together." Chef Carlos added quietly, "The kitchen is not just a place to cook, it is a place where we create and nurture life. Let us mix the ingredients of trust, honesty, and passion to build something beautiful." As the conversation flowed, it was clear that the events of the night had left an indelible mark on every soul present. The restaurant, once a battleground of conflicting ambitions, now resonated with the gentle murmur of reconciliation and the stirring promise of a brighter future. In that space, the hard lines that had divided them began to blur, replaced by the shared understanding that every person carried within them the potential to heal and to lead. In the final moments before the sun claimed the sky, Director Lawson addressed the room once more, his voice calm and imbued with a timeless wisdom. "Every life is a tapestry woven with threads of hope and despair, of trust and betrayal. Tonight, we have seen that even in our darkest moments, the light of truth can guide us toward redemption. I urge you all to carry this lesson with you, that the courage to reveal who you truly are is the first step toward a life lived fully, with integrity and love." The words hung in the air, inviting every listener to reflect on their own journeys. Marcus stepped away from the center of the room and approached the window once again. He gazed out at the awakening city, his heart lighter than it had been in years. In that quiet, reflective moment, he understood that his life was no longer defined by secrets or by the role he had been forced to play. Instead, it was defined by the choices he made to embrace the truth, to extend forgiveness, and to lead with both strength and compassion. As the new day fully emerged, the restaurant prepared to reopen its doors to the world. The lingering questions of the night now transformed into a shared resolve to build a future where every person was valued for their true self, where betrayal gave way to understanding, and where redemption was not just an idea, but a way of life. And so, in that renewed morning light, Marcus extended his hand to Mr. Harrison in a silent gesture of reconciliation, a promise that the past would be acknowledged, but that the future would be shaped by a collective commitment to change. In the quiet moments that followed, the staff gathered around as if in a circle of solidarity. They exchanged stories of personal trials and triumphs, their voices mingling with the soft clatter of dishes being set in preparation for a new beginning. The air was filled with an unspoken understanding that every mistake had been a lesson, and that every secret once revealed could pave the way for transformation. Now, as you close this story, ask yourself, what would you do if you found that the quiet soul you trusted harbored a hidden strength so profound it could change everything? Would you fear the revelation, or would you embrace the possibility of renewal and join in the journey toward a better tomorrow? In that final reflective pause, the restaurant became more than just a place of work. It became a symbol of the transformative power of truth, forgiveness, and the courage to evolve. Marcus's journey, once shrouded in the shadows of secrecy, now shone as a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever felt confined by the expectations of others. And as the day unfolded with gentle determination, every patron and every employee carried with them the echo of a powerful lesson: that sometimes the most unassuming face hides the greatest power, and that redemption lies in the simple act of being true to oneself. Share your thoughts. What would you have done when the truth was revealed, and how would you have faced the consequences of betrayal and the promise of redemption?